All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to Black Swan Revelations. We have an exciting show for you this morning. We have lots to talk about. I took notes for last night. Lots of stuff going on. They talked about the JFK files being opened. And Joe Rogan asked Donald Trump point blank, what did you read? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about election fraud, aliens. What does Trump think about aliens? Of course, we're going to be talking about election fraud, how he used to be a celebrity at one time on The View, how they welcome him with open arms, all this. If you missed it, it was on last night, came on last night. I was watching, just happened to be watching another video on YouTube, and then I got a feed notification saying that another episode. I thought for sure it was going to be today, but it dropped last night, I think about 9 o'clock my time. So I went downstairs, asked my wife, do you want to watch this show with me? It's about 3 hours. She's like, sure. So we went upstairs to our little mini theater and watched the entire 3 hours. The 3 hour podcast went by like nothing. So we're going to talk about that. So welcome once again.
In a dark world, remember to be the light. Welcome to Black Swan Revelations. Here is your host, the Black Swan himself, Shane.
All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take us over to the Joe Rogan channel. And we're going to have a look at how many views they have so far. Let's just have a look here. All right. So here's the channel. We're not going to watch any of the video just yet, just because there's going to be copy strikes handed out like it's candy because of this video. And I'm seeing already other YouTube channels, their videos are going down left, right, and center because they're showing too much of the video. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're going to try and stay away from that. But what I wanted to do is look at the views. This showed up. How many hours ago does it say here? 12 hours ago. So exactly 12 hours ago, 8 o'clock last night, this showed up. They have 11 million views so far. 11.5 million views. And a half an hour ago, I posted a comment. So we're going to read some of the comments. There's 237 comments. So obviously, I'm not going to read them all, but I think it's important just to give you a snapshot of what people are feeling from last night. So let's see. Podcasts are officially more important than traditional media now. The media must be fuming right now. They can't do numbers like this. I agree. Can't touch the numbers. Like there was another episode that aired yesterday, and I think how many views did that guy get yesterday? Don't know. Can't see it. but it wasn't a lot. And then you drop Donald Trump's interview. Like, this is what people are going to be talking about today. Like, that's all the media is going to be doing today, is talking about this video. They're either going to try and slam it, or they're going to say I think it was successful on Joe Rogan's part. I think this will be obviously his most popular video ever in the history of his channel. Unless unless he has him on again. Let's see. As a college professor who teaches journalism and former professional journalist, I can honestly say long-form podcasting is literally changing journalism in America for the good. People are watching from Lithuania. Do not count on the polls. We're going to talk about that. Get out and vote. Joe is so serious about this, he had to wear his UFC black commentary shirt. I noticed that as well. He's got his nice black shirt on that he always does his interviews with UFC fighters after UFC events. After the fight, I should say. This should be mandatory. Long form conversations with presidential candidates. And we're going to talk about that. Thank you, Joe. You've done America a huge service here. This is the most positive comment section I've ever seen in politics. A full 3 hours. This should be required of presidential candidates. Watching from London. Watching from Bangkok, Thailand for the second time. Let's rescue the Republic. God bless America. So this was 3 minutes ago. So this guy watched the entire podcast twice. I'll probably watch it again. Watching from Thailand. Hope you guys can turn it around from us. Former McDonald's employee sitting down with Rogan. That's actually funny. Just gonna put a little like there. Watching from Canada. We need world peace and healing. Love and support from Ghana. The final boss of podcasts. That's where I got the idea to change my title name right there. Unedited and non-censored political commentary in long format. These are the conversations that should be happening in every home. Make America smarter again. That would be Massa. Good luck, America, United States. So this is a person from Japan. Support from Florida. Go out and vote for this guy now. I can tell you why. He said a lot of wild stuff. Yeah, maybe. Oh, that's right. Donald Trump was like, I don't know why the press is always after me. And then Trump says right away, because you say a lot of wild stuff. Living in the UK, God bless America. Watching from Playa del Carmen in Mexico. Thank you, JRE, for helping Trump fight the good fight. Blessings to America. All right, let's see. 8 years ago, I believed the media and this man was a fool and dangerous. Today, my mind is blown. How on earth can you think this man is the bad guy? Politics and governments are broken worldwide, and this guy is going to spank it back into having and looking after the people like it should be. Watching from Brazil, praying for the USA, fascinated. There are thousands and thousands of people all over the world, and it goes on and on, folks. You could literally just read the comments all day long. And just since we were talking, another 100,000 views. So that should tell you something. That should tell you something right there. All right, so let's get into what the interview was about. Got my little notes here. Excuse me. Man, one of the things that Donald Trump mentioned last night was when you are doing speeches every single day, you have to be careful with your voice, because your voice you could lose your voice. So Trump has basically done a speech. It seems like almost every night he's doing a speech in a different state. And I think the genius of Donald J. Trump going on the Joe Rogan Experience is he could reach far more people on an episode of Joe Rogan than in any speech. Because if you think about it, they're getting numbers like 30,000, 40,000. It would take you months to get the numbers that he's getting on Joe Rogan. Months. Kamala Harris should learn from that. Should learn. And you don't have to shout. You don't have to shout. You don't have a huge crowd distracting you, whatever. You can just talk. And Trump talk for 3 hours, meaning they have so much content right now for the Republic that they could just hack this up and put it out there, and it'll be all over the place leading up to the election. So if people don't know who Donald Trump is or anything, which is shocking to me, this is unlike any other election where you don't really know what you're going to get. You know what you're going to get with Donald Trump. You know, because he was in office for 4 years. You don't know what you're going to get with Kamala Harris. You have no idea. You can guess that she's going to be good. But if she can't speak for more than 2 minutes at a time, if she can't get a couple of sentences out without sounding like it's the word, I never heard word salad before until I heard her speak, until somebody coined the phrase. And I'd like to meet that person that coined that phrase because that was mega genius. Word salad. We are all here. We are all here to do what we're doing here presently today, because what's here today is also going to be here tomorrow, and it was here yesterday. So that's why we're here doing things today so that you can be here. And what was the question? What did you ask me again? That's how she is all the time, every time. And Joe is going to try and get her on his channel. The bets are on. I don't think she's going to do it. I really don't. There's not enough time. She doesn't have enough energy. Like Donald Trump has energy to do this kind of thing. He can just sit there and talk for hours on end. So they covered a lot of ground. And we're going to attempt to recap and share my thoughts about what was said in this video. So the first thing they talked about is, what was it like going into the White House? You're not a politician. So what is that feeling like, Trump? What was that like? And Trump said this was surreal. It was absolutely surreal to go inside the White House, because the first thing that he wanted to see was the Abraham Lincoln bedroom. And I never knew that existed, but I guess the idea behind it is it was preserved exactly how Abraham Lincoln left it. So they preserved it, it's interesting because if you consider all the number of presidents that have been through the White House, they preserved everything. They preserved pictures on his wall, pictures of his son. I forget his son's name that had actually died. And that was a blow. Trump had mentioned that Abraham Lincoln suffered from depression because General Lee was kicking his derriere for years. Like they were like 14-0 at this point, or 11 victories in a row from General Lee. And the rumor was that Abraham Lincoln had the yips, which is basically like saying, when you think that you can't win, you start talking yourself down. You start talking yourself out of it, and you're like, "Yeah, I can't win anyway. So what's the use?" kind of thing. So he started to have conversations like that, like it's impossible to beat General Lee because he was a master military strategist. Like the war should have been over right away, but it drug out. The Civil War drug out. So that stuck out to Trump going there. And of course, Abraham Lincoln is 6'6". was past tense. And his son, Barron, is 6'9", if you can believe it. 6'9". Yes, it's early this morning because this is all people are going to be talking about today. So I thought I'd get a jump on it. I watched the interview in its entirety, and I can't remember the last time I've sat down and just watched Joe Rogan's episodes just in its entirety. I'm trying to think. I think the only one that I did was Adam Sandler. If you haven't seen that one, that was amazing. I watched the whole thing. I couldn't look away. It was that amazing. Others, I will probably, like you're going to do at this channel, I watch for maybe an hour and then I go away. I come back, I finish it, that kind of thing. So I was very proud of my wife. She sat and stayed up for 2 hours and 50 minutes. She started to doze about the 2 hour and 50-minute mark, but she woke up. She was just a little tired. She's not used to watching podcasts for 3 hours at a time. Once in a while, she'll watch my show. Once in a blue moon. But it was interesting that the long form commentary is, I believe it's taken the world by storm. I think this is the norm. You can go on TikTok and have numbers, crazy numbers, and all this kind of stuff. But I honestly believe that in order to unpack something, you can't do it in 30 seconds. You need time to unpack this stuff. So Joe Rogan asked him, what was it like? He said it was surreal getting there because, again, he's not a politician. We got to understand that. Yeah, exactly. Barron could be a giant, except he doesn't have 6 fingers. So, what was I going to say? Oh, yes. In regards to the surrealness of it, you got to think about it from the perspective of Donald Trump. Statistically, 8% of the people out of all the presidents are generals. 92% are politicians. So if you look at Donald Trump, he's in the 1 percentile. Not even Ronald Reagan was 100% politician or 100% actor. He was both. He went into acting, and then I believe he became the governor of California, and then decided to run. That's usually how it works as a president. You run for politics. Just look at Sleepy Joe. 50 plus years. I don't know how many years he was in, but that there are lifers in politics. And the problem that Donald Trump had on the first day is he didn't know who were the survivors and who were the people that were just dropping off, and then who are the people that were disloyal. Because some people couldn't handle the pace of what he wanted to do. And some people just wanted to do just enough to stay in. And that's what he called those people lifers, because they just do just enough work to make things move a little bit forward, but they don't really get anything done. And that was very frustrating to Donald Trump because he's used to making business deals. Welcome, Jeff. Welcome, Paul. Welcome, Cindy Lou. Welcome, Wide Awake and Aware 22. Great channels. Great channels. Great channel names. My voice is parched a little bit. I'm not going to lie. It's true. It's not easy doing a live show 3, 4, 5 times a week if you're going 2 hours at a time. Like, you got to really pace yourself on this kind of thing. And I knew this was coming up. I knew it. I was hoping it was going to drop yesterday morning. That was the plan because it seemed like that was the pattern. So I was a little bit surprised when they dropped this other video, but they go heavy conspiracy in that video. What is that one called? I'm going to watch that one next. That one is called, Let's just go to it here. I'll show you. This is a video you guys got to check out after this. Sam Tripoli. They have 341,000 views, so not a lot of views. It's episode 2218. And if you watch the first 5 minutes of it, you're going to be hooked because they go full conspiracy yesterday morning. So it's kind of funny. So I'll have to watch that after. All right. So we're at the White House. And then we talk a little bit about the idea that Trump wasn't a politician. So he had to learn very quick. He had to learn who his friends were and who his enemies were real quick, metaphorically speaking, the people that could actually help America. And if they couldn't, he would fire them. He said if he had to do it again, he would just fired everybody. Like everybody that, especially today, everybody that was around when during the Afghanistan debacle where they left all these weapons, they left like billions of dollars of planes, weapons, everything, right down to the nighttime vision goggles. That's what they left behind. And Trump said, I would have never done that. You never do that. You never have the army leave first. The army leaves last. And he said, it would have never happened on my watch. The war in Ukraine would have never happened on my watch. China would not be as aggressive as they are right now. They are licking their chops over Taiwan. He said Taiwan is the apple of their eye, and it's true. They have chips that they're processing there. They actually have a plant in Arizona. I actually drove by the plant. I think it's called TMSC, but it's one of the largest Taiwan manufacturing plants in America. So they have a plant right in Arizona. It's massive. It looks like a city. So I have to drive by there. So he said we're losing jobs to other countries, and one of the things that he brought up was tariffs, which I never really thought about before. I never thought about the concept of tariffs. Basically, Donald Trump's theory is that he can solve everything with tariffs. So let's just let me just look up tariffs just so we can get a little definition of what tariffs are. I have an idea, but I want to make sure that I'm accurate. I'll share the definition here. So tariffs are taxes imposed by the government on imported or exported goods. Typically, they are applied to imports to make foreign products more expensive, encouraging consumers to buy domestic goods instead. Tariffs can protect local industries, generate revenue for the government, and impact international trade relations. There are different types of tariffs, such as specific tariffs, i.e., a fixed fee per unit, and ad valorem tariffs, a percentage of the product's value. While tariffs can help domestic industries, they might lead to higher prices for consumers and potential trade disputes. So if we think about it, Trump said this is how he would deal with China. He would add tariffs. So if you think about it from the perspective of you have a plant that is in China, an American plant, like they're not going to buy American stuff. They're just not. They buy their own stuff and they sell their own stuff to Americans. Americans buy from everywhere. Same thing in Canada. We buy foreign cars, we buy domestic cars, all this kind of stuff. But what Trump was, the point that he was trying to make was, if you are sending goods and services to America, we're gonna, and it's not fair, we are going to tariff you like 100%, 200%, or whatever, unless you build your plant in the US and then hire Americans. And to me, I think that's genius. I think that's genius because then this is another form of revenue. And Donald Trump was hinting at the idea that he could potentially eliminate taxes by allowing other countries to help eliminate debt, the US debt, because I think they're like over $15 trillion. And Joe Rogan said, just to be clear, you're saying that you can quite possibly either reduce or eliminate taxes for Americans. He said, yes, it is possible. It'll take time, but the way to do that is through tariffs. Tariffs are king. You impose tariffs on other nations, and you could bring down taxes. And people that don't understand how to make money are opposed to bringing down taxes. They think you should tax more. But instead, what Trump was saying is when you bring taxes down, people invest more. They buy more things, which is true. Because if you've been taxed so much, you're not going to go out and buy stuff because you're worried about making budget. But if you reduce the tax, it allows people to go out and they buy more stuff. That's just, to me, that's just common sense. So if you go back to the book of Leviticus, the book of Leviticus used tariffs. Probably didn't know that. Israel was not to charge income tax to its own people. Instead, they were to charge tariffs to foreign nations that wanted to do business with Israel. This is in the book of Leviticus. You thought Leviticus wasn't sexy. It's probably one of the sexiest books in the Bible. And I know that sounds weird just saying it, but it's a very good book. You learn a lot about how to build a nation. And don't think the founders of the United States of America did not read the book of Leviticus. They did. If you read scriptures in the Old Testament, there's one verse, I forget where it is, might be in Psalms or somewhere, could be in Deuteronomy. Somebody can quote it, but basically Israel will not be a borrower. Instead, they will be a lender to nations, and nations will borrow from them. That's where this principle comes from, all the way back there. You don't charge each other. You charge foreigners that are coming in. This is how you do business. And people that don't understand this don't know how to make money. Really, at the end of the day, they're confused. They think you got to tax the billionaires. But what will happen is if you tax the billionaires beyond reason, they will leave the country and they'll go to another country where there is virtually no income tax or little income tax, and they'll do business there. Because billionaires provide jobs for people, average people like yourself or myself. That's what they do. A person that is making $30,000 a year is scraping by, and they are not hiring people for jobs. They're just not doing that. But if you get someone that's making a lot of jack, they will hire other people to help them because they are burdened with so much cash coming in that they have to hire more people to get the work done. That's, again, this is common sense. So the idea that you're going to tax a billionaire and say, we got to increase their taxes, there's loopholes. If you're incorporated, you can minimize your taxes because you're purchasing assets for your company that goes against your income. But you can't do that just as an individual. You have to be self-employed. You have to have all the ways to write off things, like if you buy clothes, if you buy tools for your trade, whatever it is, that's how you can actually start to write things off. But you can't do it as an individual. So when someone says you have to tax the billionaires more, they don't understand business. They don't understand how it works. And they just go, well, Jeff Bezos never pays any taxes. He most likely does, but it's in a different way than you or I. Pays all these other employment benefits, all kinds of stuff. Probably stock options, who knows? All kinds of stuff he has to pay for in order to hire employees that you or I do not pay. So let's see. So what else can let me just go to the comments here just to make sure I'm not missing anything. We're only on page 1 of like page 3. All right. So let's see here. What's going on? Welcome, Cheryl. Morning. Does anyone think Rogan could be JFK's assistant in the administration? Almost seemed like Trump was doing a job interview. That's actually an interesting comment. I don't want to say no 100% because I think if if it was positioned properly as perhaps Joe being an advisor or something like that, quite possibly, because I know Joe Rogan is into health, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why perhaps uh, America is off the charts when it comes to obesity. Like it's horrendous when you think about it. Like the percentage, I think it's like 82% of Americans would not qualify for the army because of obesity. So anyone that applies for the army, they don't qualify. You're too fat. Too fat. And obesity, I forget what the percentage is to be considered obese. I think it's above 18%. Like you can be overweight, obese, and then you can be morbid obesity, which I think is above 40%. I'm considered obese right now, according to the stats. I think my BMI is like 33%. Like it's ridiculous. Like it's high. So this is why I got some weights. I have my elliptical downstairs that we had to blow the dust off. We've had it for years, but I just never used it. My wife used it. My daughter uses it when she used to live with us. But I just, the weights that I did have, they just collected dust as well. So now I'm like, okay, I got to work out. So now I started a couple of days ago because I didn't like my blood pressure was high. It could have been because I had a few cups of coffee before I took my blood pressure. And then I was obese on the charts. I was like, the chart was going smashing to the side of the wall saying 1 at a time, please, on the scale. And I'm like, it's just me. It's just me. It's crazy. If you guys are wondering right now, I'm about 260 pounds. I'm 260, 6'1", 260, 55 years old. So, yeah, I was like, what happened? I was bench pressing 300 pounds when I was 45 years old. And now lifting the weights. Man, I'm telling you, as you get older, everything starts going down. So when Joe Rogan was talking about health and talking about how RFK Jr. is going after corporations, I can agree with the comment that perhaps Joe Rogan could have a role in that. Like he doesn't need anything else, but he still likes to make money. He still likes to do things that he's passionate about. So, yeah, so we'll talk about that a little bit. Let's see what's going on here. Oh, my wife just sent me a little video of my little puppy that I put on a fire truck. We had to put our puppy down a month ago. And I actually had him on a fire truck and I was pushing him around on a little toy. So she just sent it to me this morning. So, yeah, my wife's crazy like that. Trying to make me cry on a podcast. I do miss my dog. I do miss my little dog. All right, let's continue here. So, talked about the White House, talked about that Trump is not a normal politician. Talked about when Kamala Harris said we have no troops in the world, and Trump was pretty adamant about that. He was pretty upset about that. And so is Joe Rogan. Like There are thousands of troops around the world right now that are losing sleep because they're defending the United States, the values of the United States of America. And Kamala Harris just basically spit on that. It was not good. So then they talked a little bit about the debates. Like one of the reasons why he wanted to do the debates was originally they talked about the idea of sitting down. And he said he preferred to stand up. And they put all kinds of stipulants on the debates, hoping that he wouldn't show up at the debate. And that's what Trump honestly felt, was they're putting all these stipulations that maybe he wouldn't show up, and then they could say, well, Trump is afraid of debating Sleepy Joe, or he's afraid of debating Kamala Harris. So he did both debates, destroyed Sleepy Joe, and Trump even admitted, he said, you know what, I feel bad for the guy because it felt like they took it away from him. It felt like they took it away from him, which is interesting because if you hate your opponent so much, you're not going to say things like this. So I think Trump has enough wisdom to understand that there are other powers at be that will force people into certain situations. And he believes, and I agree, I think it was mysterious that all of a sudden Joe Biden a few days before was saying he's not ever going away. And then the next day, Kamala Harris is in. And then Joe has a press conference about it. And it was like, I have to do the right thing for the country because this is the right thing at the right time and all this. I'm like, that's not really what you said a few days before. So it was interesting that Donald Trump said that he felt that they took it away from Sleepy Joe, but he also acknowledged that he was incompetent, and Kamala Harris is actually more incompetent. Like, she's just dumb. Talked about the border a little bit, the idea that there's so many people coming in, and we had talked about this the day before on our channel, talking about the idea that they're going to be putting new laws into place, basically saying if you harm a soldier when you're in the United States of America, you could get 10 years if you harm a soldier. If you harm a monument, meaning you deface a monument, you can get 10 years. The idea behind it is to be a deterrent. Like, you want to cause people to reflect, hey, if I shoot at a police officer, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. If I put a noose around Andrew, what's your president's name? Is it Andrew Garfield? Don't know his name. If I put a noose around his neck, I could get 10 years in prison just for doing that one act. That logically should deter people from doing those kinds of things, because if you spray paint some of those statues because it's so porous, you will never be able to remove those spray paint. Like, it'll be there for years, decades. So this is why I agree with this. I think you can't just go around burning down buildings and pushing over statues just because you don't agree with whatever happened in the past in history. There's other ways of going about that, but you don't do that stuff. You don't light people's cars on fire. That is wrong to do that. So there's going to be change coming down the pipes for sure. And if someone that is a drug dealer, a known drug dealer, part of the cartel, part of a gang, whatever, coming into the United States of America, if you're caught selling drugs to children or anyone else in the United States, especially fentanyl and all this stuff, you will get the death penalty. That's coming. I don't think it's here yet, but you will get the death penalty. Now, you can argue and say, well, I thought we're supposed to love every cartel. We're supposed to love every drug lord, every murderer. And it's like, I don't know what Bible you're reading, but you are to basically hate the crime. So if you have people that are giving fentanyl to children, then what they're doing is actually evil. So they need to be stopped. And China is guilty of sending fentanyl to America, United States, and Canada. They're wiping us out from the inside out. So if you put these little stipulations, I think they should go a step further and go after the source as well. Where are these plants? Where are these manufacturing plants of fentanyl the highest? Like zero tolerance for the stuff coming in. If you catch it in your possession and you could prove that they had it in their possession, then yeah, the death penalty. I don't have a problem with that, because you gotta deter people. And this is what happened in Leviticus. If somebody was working on the Sabbath back then, when God said, do not work on the Sabbath, and somebody comes in, they ignore it, they were to be put to death. Now you can argue and say, well, I don't agree with God on this one. I don't agree with him. It was designed to be a deterrent, meaning if it happened one time, anyone else moving forward would see, oh, that's what happened. Okay, I won't do that. That's the idea. Oh, I murdered someone. Now I have the death penalty. Maybe the next person won't murder someone. That's the idea behind it. If you go slack on that, then things begin to fall apart. That's the law, really, when you think about it, is for transgressors. It's not for you or me. Meaning, if you're not speeding, you're not going to get a ticket. If you're not parking illegally, you're not going to get a ticket. But if you do get a ticket, go ahead and fight it. Go ahead and argue with an officer by smashing their windshield and saying, I disagree with it. They don't bear the sword for nothing. They will go to the nth degree to arrest you. I know that's an extreme situation, but I did a ride along with a friend with the police, the Calgary police. And when we're driving, one of the officers said, he was telling a story. He said that there was one time where he was at a place where there was an argument, and he got in a tussle with the guy. This was the police officer. He got in a tussle with the guy, and they fell to the ground, and the guy actually tried to reach for his gun. And because they have a certain way, they have a mechanism in there where it's almost impossible to pull the gun out of your holster. The gun never came out, but the guy was trying to pull it out to shoot the police officer. And the police officer went on his radio and sent in a code. And I forget what the code was. I don't think it was Order 66 or anything like that. But there was a code that told every officer in the city of Calgary that somebody was going for his gun and he was going to get shot. Just that simple code that an officer is in trouble, and cars went from every location to this part. And my friend Jeff said, it's not about who's tougher with the police. That's not how they work. It's about numbers. You will not get away because they will send more numbers. More numbers. You will not win that fight. Their job is to take you out or take you down. So if you're the toughest guy in the bar and they're taking you down outside, they're going to keep sending police officers until you are down. It's just like go and step on an ant pile and watch what happens. Leave your foot there or put your hand in an ant pile and press it down and just leave it. It's numbers. Ants will swarm you. They won't stop until you remove your hand. So I thought that's interesting because, again, Trump said if you create a deterrent high enough, it'll cause people to pause. And I think that's what you want. You don't want a dictator, but you want people to think twice about harming someone. Now, you can pose an argument on the other side and say, well, that just gives the police officers a right to just shoot everybody and all this kind of stuff. Well, if you're at the wrong place and the wrong time, that could happen. But if you're not committing crimes and you're not going to these crazy rallies where you're flipping over police cars and all this kind of stuff, I don't see the problem. I don't see where you're going to get harmed. See how people jump all the way to the opposite side saying, well, they're going to come in, they're going to take everything away from us. Well, no. Like, you also have to understand that Americans have more guns at home than anywhere else in the world. So that's not an easy feat. That's not what police officers want to do, going door to door raiding homes. But if you're a criminal, they will come after you. And they're getting more rules, more laws put in place to do that. So they talked about that. Yeah, so there could be a lot of connections with celebrities, famous people connected to some of these drug operations for sure. For sure. So one interesting thing that Trump brought up, he said, you must be a big fan of Dana White. And I don't think Trump got it when Joe said, this is a big reason why you're here on this podcast. Meaning, I think Dana asked Joe for a favor for Trump to have him on the podcast. And I don't think Trump picked that up. I don't think he picked it up. The idea that Dana put in a request to get Trump on his show because he said, you're the reason why you're here. And yes, I'm a big fan of Dana, a huge fan. I used to work for Dana for, I don't know, I forget what he said, almost the first 10 or so, 10 fights of UFC. He didn't get paid a nickel. And he didn't want to get paid. He wanted to do it because he loved the sport so much. So he did it for nothing. But he's a big fan. And Trump said that I think, and I'm speaking on behalf of Trump, I think that Dana is a fan of mine because I helped him when no one else helped him. And Joe Rogan said, Dana doesn't stop talking about that, what you did for him, because when no one else wanted to take on the UFC, as in allow them to fight in their city, Trump gave them good places to set up their fights. And he was the first one to do that in America legally. And Dana, because he's so loyal, never forgot that. And Trump said he gave one of the best speeches ever. And then now Elon's on his side, Tucker Carlson, the governor that used to be, I think she was the governor of Hawaii, I think, Tulsi Gabbard. She's on his side. She used to be a Democrat, JFK Jr. So it's interesting that it feels like the pendulum is swinging over to the Republican side and people are taking notice. Like, you can't compete on this level of, like, he's on almost every channel. Like, you can't beat a guy that doesn't sleep, is what I'm trying to say. You can't beat that. He never sleeps. At least it seems like it. He's always doing something. He's either doing a press conference or he's doing a rally or he's on a talk show. He was on Undertaker's talk show. And I tell you what, he is doing this on purpose. Like, if you think about the WWE world for a second, they have the most numbers basically on any YouTube channel, arguably more than Joe Rogan. There's a huge fan base there. So if Undertaker is quite popular with fans and Trump is on 6 feet under, he's going to reach a large audience. If he's on Dr. Phil, he's going to reach a large audience. If he's on Tucker Carlson, being interviewed by Tucker Carlson, if he's being interviewed by Joe Rogan, he's going to have a huge following and people are going to vote. I can picture a landslide if there's no shenanigans for this. And I think that's what the Democrats are fearful of, because Kamala cannot keep up this pace. She can't. Nobody can. If you think about it, Like, this guy's been going. He's a machine. He's been doing this his whole life. This is not something that he's doing just because he's running for president. Oh, now I'm going to start stepping up my hours. No, like, he is known to get up early, like 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. And he's known to go to bed at like 12:30 and midnight, sometimes later. Yeah, I don't know if he'll take a nap. I really don't. I think there's a few things that he's going to take care of right away. So we talked a little bit about that. Maybe we should talk a little bit about the border. They talked a little bit of how would you solve that and all this, like why is it a problem and all this. And again, it's because you have so many people coming in that are illegal immigrants. Not talking about people that are working today and they have jobs and they might be illegal, but they're doing things the right way. It's talking about criminals coming across the border. And it's pretty clear that that's who he's addressing. People that are coming in boatloads, truckloads, plane loads, and being dropped to sanctuary cities. And then they get citizenship in some way, and then they're allowed to vote. That's what he wants to stop. And they talked about voting. Like, how does this even make sense that in one of the greatest nations in the world, how does this make sense that you don't need ID? Like, I've never heard of that. That doesn't make sense to me at all because they don't do that on planes. You can't just show up with your ticket and they're like, yeah, just go on in. You can't do that. You need ID. You need a thing called a passport. So it's shocking to me. And Joe Rogan even said this. He said, I can't figure out any reason other than, and Trump cut him off and said, they're cheating. And Joe Rogan didn't deny it. He's like, yeah, like there is no logical reason as to why you need to not have ID. I know it's a little bit of a double negative, but if you think about it, everywhere you go, if you look underage to buy cigarettes in Canada, unless you look 40, unless you look like a picture of a guy that his name is Gordon, looks like an old guy, you will be asked for ID. So if we do that for liquor, if we do that for cigarettes, if you need ID to open up a bank account, why not use that same mentality to vote? Like, what is the crime to showing ID? Like, who are we kidding here? So unless you solve that, and he hinted, and he didn't talk about it, but I caught this. He hinted at the idea that Elon Musk perhaps could solve this, which is interesting to me because I've always been throwing across the idea that Donald Trump could be a runner of the Antichrist. He could be a runner-up. And also Elon Musk could be a false prophet. I've also tossed President Zelensky in the Antichrist thing. People are like, no, it's the French president. He's Macron. And he's like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's Obama. He's talking to everybody. Okay. I'm just telling you that you could pose a case that if, let's just say the switch flipped, like Judas. When Jesus announced that someone was going to betray him, all 12 disciples asked Jesus, is it me? That should give you pause before you jump down. No. It is impossible for Donald Trump to be the Antichrist. It is impossible for insert whatever name. It's impossible. The disciples were not sure who was going to betray Jesus. They said, is it me? Is it him? Is it her? And Judas went up to Jesus and said, is it me? And Jesus said, yes, it's you. So that should cause you pause that the spirit of the Antichrist is always around. You just need a body, a person that is willing to submit a knee, take a knee. And then all of a sudden, the devil can enter into that person. But if you don't have somebody that's willing, it's going to be very difficult. And right now, I would suggest that Donald Trump is not willing to be in that role. But he said something interesting. He said Elon Musk could help with voter fraud. He can help take care of this problem so you never have that happen again. It's so easy to solve. So he didn't dive into it, but he just mentioned it very slightly because Joe Rogan said, you're good friends now with Elon Musk. He's like, yeah, he's so smart. And they were talking about the elections. He's like, yeah, he could. And then they went away. So I thought, if you were to control people in a way that would make things secure, what would be the most logical thing? Well, in my Bible, it's the mark of the beast. Now, is it too early for that? Feels like it. But if you wanted to control the world and you wanted to eliminate thieves, illegal immigrants, and all that, you have to have some identification system in place so that you know who's who. And why not swear allegiance to President Donald Trump and roll out something like this? We'll call it version 1 to help prevent election fraud. And then down the road, all of a sudden it gets more ramped up and other countries go, oh, this kind of makes sense. If we partake of this system, we can also eliminate stuff in our country. And then all of a sudden it goes all around the world. And all of a sudden you have one person in power, whether it be Trump, whether it be someone else. This is why you guys come to the Black Swan channel, because I throw everything into the mix. We haven't even talked about aliens yet. We're going to talk about that. They talk about aliens on that show. So if you haven't seen this, you got to check it out. I'm telling you. So Dana White, Trump loves Dana White. He says he's loyal. He's been loyal to Trump and Trump's loyal to him. And he believes the election was stolen, and he explained why. There were supposed to be rules in place, as in timing of it. Like you couldn't just bring in extra ballots after a certain time. You had to have people watching. Like there was all kinds of rules that were supposed to get passed through legislation that didn't happen. And I joked about it yesterday on my channel, talking about the idea of the guys that were on my panel. I'm like, you guys are prejudiced towards dead people, because I think you should allow dead people to vote for their own, because Jesus Christ said, let the dead bury their dead. And I'm saying, let dead people vote for Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, because many people think that he is dead, that he's actually the guy right now is not Joe Biden. That's what people are saying. And in fact, he's a couple of inches taller than he used to be when he first started being the president. So these are all the conspiracy stuff going around, that maybe Joe passed away and now we have a clone. Don't know. This is why I put on my little thing, this is Black Swan. This is not a clone. So if you see another channel like this saying that they're the Black Swan, make sure to look for the little in brackets and parentheses that make sure it says not a clone, because then that's me. See how secure we are here? So elections, so I mentioned off the top, there's almost 12 million views since we started this show, or since we started this live show. That was about an hour ago. It was 11.5 million. What are they at right now? Let's just see. Let's just see what they're at right now. It's not refreshed yet. Not still saying 11.5 million. Interesting. That should be a little bit higher by now. What else do we have here? Stolen election, lots of comments. Oh yeah. We have to talk about what's going on in California with regards to the fires that were going on. And they talked about, like, Trump, Joe Rogan asked Trump, do you believe in protecting the environment and all this kind of stuff? And do you think this is a real thing that the earth is getting worse and worse and all this stuff? And Trump's like, yeah, like you can, I'm paraphrasing, but you can pose an argument that, yeah, there are some things that are worse now, but he said you can fix it. Like with the forest fires in California, you can fix it by having more water. You might be asking, well, okay, that seems common sense, but how would you do this? Well, one is you don't drain the lakes into the Pacific. You don't do that. And Joe Rogan brought up, he said, yeah, they did that 30, 40 years ago. They drained this lake, and it was called Tulare Lake, just off the coast of California. It was a huge lake. And Trump said there was enough water there to water the soil, the forest, all this kind of stuff. You could have rerouted it to take care of all that stuff. And Joe was like, yeah, they literally drained the swamp. They drained the lake. And Trump said, yeah, they poured it into the Pacific. It was a freshwater lake, and they poured it into the Pacific. He says California doesn't need to be the way that it is right now. Like, you can hire people to clean up the brush, and that'll prevent forest fires as well. And there was a little bit of pushback from Joe saying, well, are you going to hire people to rake the lawn in every forest in California? And that's not what Trump was saying. He was saying, like, there are debris that is left behind by trees. If you clean that stuff up and you water the area, you're not going to get forest fires. But it's negligence that's doing this stuff. This is man-made problems. And they talked about the windmills. When we drove to Arizona, man, I think it was in Utah, there was tons of these windmills. And I'm like, this is ugly. It just went on, and I think it was outside of Las Vegas as well, where you just see fields and fields of solar panels. I'm like, this looks horrible. Like, it looks ugly. It's unsexy to look at mountains or valleys or anything, and you see just tons of windmills forever. And they don't really do the job because they're actually causing more harm. Birds, all this kind of stuff, they're an eyesore. And when they break down, I can't tell you how many trucks we came across with windmills on the truck, and these things are huge. So the problem is you can't recycle this stuff and all that. It just costs too much money to do all that. And Trump said it is a possibility that you can just bury this stuff. But the problem is it's so dang expensive to assemble these windmills. And then when they break down, which they all will, it's just a matter of time. They're all going to break down. You have to leave them now, because you're not going to take them down and remove them, because that costs too much money. And now you just got a big eyesore of windmills that don't work. And it's proven it doesn't work. When there were brownouts in California, they would send out notices to people like Joe Rogan saying, don't charge your vehicle. So if you have an electric car and you're trying to charge your vehicle and there's a brownout in your area, and they're saying, no, everybody, like, don't water your grass, don't charge your electric car. It's like, how in the world by 2035 are you supposed to have every single car electric in America? Trump's like, I'll put a stop to that. Yeah, lots of windmills. Save taxpayers money. Bring back chain gangs to clean up. That's funny. All right. What else did they talk about? I'm telling you, this will be the most thorough video on Joe Rogan. And I don't want to make it 3 hours, because then you might as well watch his show. But a lot of people won't take the time to watch the full 3 hours. Instead, they're going to watch other people that may not have watched the show, but they'll say, oh, I caught little highlights here and there, and I didn't watch the whole thing, and they just want to get a video out. But you actually have to spend the time to watch the whole video. And I'm encouraging you to watch the whole video. So in regards to the war, he said it would never happen on his watch. And Joe pressed him, saying, how would you end a war? And Trump said, which I believe Trump when he says this, I can't tell you the strategy because that strategy won't work because they'll be aware of it. So you can't make a deal by telling the person, here's the deal, here's the offer, I'm going to make you whatever it is. It doesn't work that way. But Trump said I could end that war tomorrow. And there's so many countries that, like, for example, North Korea, he said they have a lot of nuclear weapons. And he said, like, we made them pause, but now because the administration is so weak, they are feeling more aggressive now. Like, this is our time to shine. This is the time to start moving in on areas. Perhaps you have China moving in on Taiwan. Perhaps this is why Russia started to go after Ukraine, because there's a weak administration. Iran feels comfortable sending rockets to Israel. And now obviously Israel's retaliating, but there's all these people that are trying to make a move. And this is almost what happened after World War I, after World War II. There was a jockeying that was going on where countries were like, I want a little bit more real estate. And I don't agree with the establishment, especially after World War I. Germany was a little bit like, no, I don't like how we have to pay back all this stuff and whatever. Now, basically, our country is now bankrupt, and we don't like how it was divvied up by, I think it was like 3 countries or whatever. So they had a chip on their shoulder for years until they bounced back and they start breaking rules by building up their military, which was a no-no, all this stuff. And then Japan started doing it, all these little pockets all over the place. And then you get World War II. That's 30 seconds. It's probably more complicated than that. But this is what's happening now, is people are trying to position their chess pieces now. Why? Because the United States has a weak administration, meaning Kamala Harris, she's weak. What else do we have? And Trump went on to say that, like, he almost had Iran on the verge of bankrupt. Like he said, they're basically bankrupt. We stopped that. And then all of a sudden, now they have nuclear capability, or very close to it. And what's their target? Well, they want to go after Israel. And he said there are enough nukes right now that the Middle East would just be vaporized. And I mentioned that about the Samson option, that Israel actually has enough weapons that they could vaporize the whole Middle East. That's the Samson option. If you overwhelm them, they just have to push the red button and boom. And this is what deterred North Korea, where Trump basically said to North Korea, like, I get it, you have nukes, so do we. You have a red button, so do we, but our red button works. So that's a deterrent right away. What else? Oh yeah, then they talked about health. They talked about the idea that, again, I teased that a little bit, but when we went to Phoenix, I didn't know that there was these codes for food coloring, like red 5, yellow 6, yellow 5, red 40, blue 40, whatever it is, blue 1. Like, I had no idea. And then when you look it up, they're like petroleum-based products that's in M&Ms, and I love M&Ms. But that food coloring is also in Apple Jacks and all these artificial cereals. No wonder America is obese. Like, you guys are poisoning yourself, like literally poisoning yourself on purpose in order to make money, which is shocking. It's shocking. It shouldn't be that way. The United States, as far as I understand, is the only country left that does this to themselves on purpose. This is not like nobody knows what's going on. Like, when you go higher up, they know what they're doing. FDA, all this stuff. They know, the pharmaceutical companies know what's going on. They're profiting from your sickness, taking you out by giving you easier food to consume, because sometimes it's not easy to harvest crops when the fields don't have enough water. Back to California. And you get places like Las Vegas. It's very hard to get food out there. So they raise prices on the good food, and the cheap food you can just buy. You can just go anywhere, grocery store, and just buy food that is bad for you, that will give you cancer and all kinds of stuff. And yet there are companies that are making money from that. Crazy, right? So I think there's a lot of changes that need to happen. Yeah, everything. They want is fat and stupid. Yeah, again, that should cause you to be a little bit concerned when 80% of Americans today would not qualify because they're obese or out of shape to join the army. So if there was some kind of a draft to happen, you guys got no army. It's crazy, right? We talked a little bit about tariffs, explained a little bit about what tariffs are. I think they're a good idea. Yeah, basically, I think when Joe Biden took over, they flew 28 bombers over Taiwan, almost like a little hint that, hey, China has a little bit more power now, that Trump is not in office. So they started doing military exercises around Taiwan. It's crazy, right? We talked about the forest fires, and Joe Rogan said, yeah, if you can give $175 billion to Ukraine, and we did the same thing. We gave, I think, $650 million to Ukraine. When President Zelensky came to Canada asking for money, we gave him money. But yet we can't advertise, we can't spend more money on educating people on what foods are good for you and what foods are bad for you. That seems like a forbidden zone. Like if you put huge labels like they did with cigarette packages and showing gross pictures of people, and you put that on M&Ms, a picture that has someone that's like 1,000 pounds or whatever on it, that might be a deterrent if you're trying to give it to your kids. Maybe not. Maybe not. But I think if you start putting more advertisement out there that you're actually causing a harm, and perhaps you might not get medical treatment knowing all this stuff, I think that could be a deterrent down the road. But you got to get rid of all these addictions. Like we're all addicted to food. We're addicted to coffee. We're addicted to cream, food, fast food, fat. We're addicted to it. Again, there seems to be a reason why Israel wasn't into eating fat. They were into eating the lean meat and all this, and they had a strict diet. It's probably because of this. Like Eli was obese. Why? Because there was so many people that were corrupt in Israel back in Samuel's day, one of the last judges. And the sons of Belial, that's the nickname for Eli's two sons, because basically they were considered wicked and useless. Why? Because they would eat the fat from the meat. And people would argue with these priests saying, you can't eat the fat. Like, don't do this. This is wicked. Don't do it. And in fact, they would eat raw meat, fat, didn't matter. And they were all becoming obese. So you're right. Like you become silly because if you have so much saturated fat, it's hard to focus. And then we blame it on things like ADD and all this stuff. But I think it's our diet. What else? Okay, so we talked a little bit about, I talked briefly about the idea that Trump used to be a big deal once upon a time ago. And he was, like on The View, he was a celebrity. Oprah wasn't on The View, but Oprah would give him accolades. She would greet him with a warm hug. And also Whoopi Goldberg would give him a hug. All these people on The View would basically love Donald Trump until he started running for president, and then it changed. And then he got hit so many times with fake news constantly. And Joe said, this is absolutely astonishing that you could be on top of the world, because he had the Celebrity Apprentice, which was like number one on NBC for like 12 years in a row. And they actually made him an offer to stay because he mentioned to them that he wanted to do something else. He wanted to run for president. They said, no, don't do that. Just stay here, keep doing these seasons of the Celebrity Apprentice. And he said no. And in fact, what he did was he actually gave, I think, one of the last seasons to Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it tanked. Even the governor of California could not keep that show because it's not Trump. He did it a little bit differently, and it failed. The ratings were no good anymore because Trump wasn't there. So it's interesting that people loved Trump before he became a president, and after he became a president, people turned on him. So I think that says something in itself right there. Then they talked about the JFK files. And Joe Rogan asked him, so what's in the files? How much did you read? And he said, why didn't you release it, your findings? And Trump's answer was that he felt it wasn't the right time because there were still people alive from that era, whether police, whether government officials, families, whatever. And he says, but I think this time when I get in to office, I will release everything as to what happened. And that all of a sudden, all the conspiracy guys are going to be going nutso because there's something shady going on inside the JFK assassination, and Trump is going to open up that file. It's interesting, right? Then they also talked about aliens, and Jordan Peterson asked Elon Musk, and you would think out of all the people in the world that Elon Musk would believe in aliens, but he said right now, to date, there is no evidence of aliens anywhere in the universe, anywhere. And I, as a Christian, I know who these aliens are. They're just fallen angels. They're angels that are outside of their realm. They're outside of their jurisdiction. That's what I think aliens are. But it's interesting that the guy that wants to send people underground for a whole generation, breathing oxygen in cubicles underground for 100 years to see if there is life out there, doesn't believe that there is life. So that's confusing to me. Like, he should be a forerunner saying there is alien out there, alien life forms out there. This is why we want to go out there. So that tells me he knows something that we don't know. Back to the false prophet thing. I think he knows a little bit more that he's letting on about fallen angels and all this kind of stuff. Nephilim, probably knows where the bottles of Nephilim juice are hidden, all this kind of stuff, right? Maybe Trump does as well. But they talked about it. So Trump said he's going to open up the JFK files probably on day one. Joe asked him if he believes in aliens. He says he does, in the way of from the interviews that he's had from Air Force men, where they've seen round objects that goes beyond physics. So from like 50 miles an hour to like 50,000 miles an hour. He says it's beyond comprehension. And these are Navy pilots that are vouching, that are saying, I swear I saw something that is beyond physics. And Trump believes them. And I think Joe Rogan believes that also, that there is something beyond our realm that is causing these manifestations. What else do we talk about? Oh, and then he talks about, this is the last thing here. He says, I understand, this is Trump saying this, I understand that in the Bible, it talks a lot about how the world is going to end. And all of a sudden, my ears perked up, because it's interesting that Trump knows about what's going on in the Bible about the end times, perhaps black swan events, all this kinds of things start popping up into my head, because it's interesting that the president of the United States is paying attention to the book of Revelation. And he is aware that there's a massive war going on to take out the whole planet, basically, except for a few. So he's aware of it. So that's something to think about. I think you should take that comment, and that was probably the last 10, 15 minutes of the 3-hour podcast. So take that, watch that part, and then put it on the shelf and think about this, what he said. So that's it for today's video. I hope you got something out of it. Hopefully I saved you about an hour and a half. But if I've pegged your interest at all, I think you should watch the show, watch the podcast. It's 3 hours. You're going to lose a day watching it. But that's why I watched it late last night, because I wanted to talk about it this morning, because I feel like there are people going to be reviewing this, and I wanted to see what you guys think. When you watch other people reviewing the podcast, I want you to see if they share the same insights that I have, and do they have a little bit of a slant. Then you can tell who's for Trump, who's against Trump. You could basically decide from there based on this video alone. So I tried to be fair and unbiased as humanly possible. I am a fan of Trump, but I also can look at it from a Christian perspective and see all these chess pieces moving around towards the latter days. Like I'm not naive to say that Trump cannot be the Antichrist, or Elon Musk cannot be the false prophet. I'm not that naive. So I just put everybody out there, and I'm like, yeah, this guy could be up to no good. Don't know. I don't have a dog in that fight, but I do know who wins at the end in my Bible. So awesome. Okay, so some people are saying they've watched it. So Lisa, what did you think? Did you enjoy it? Like, was I pretty much on target for what was talked about this morning? Did I miss anything? About I think I covered a lot. Why won't Christians? Okay, here we go. Why won't Christians call out Trump 24 campaign suddenly? My body, my choice. Melina ad, and no federal ban on abortion. My body, my choice. Okay. So I think I know what you're talking about, that I think you're going down the road that Trump to you is turning on abortion, going, no, he's allowing abortion or whatever, because he isn't going as far as you wanted to completely eliminate abortion. And I get it. I don't think there should be any rule in place to allow abortions, period. And I don't think we should pay for them, period. It never made sense to me to do that. So I get it. Let's see what else here. Abraham Lincoln Bible is an Orthodox Bible, 80 chapters versus 66. I think he meant to say 80 books versus 66. Includes the Apocrypha. Both Trump and Obama laid their hand on the Lincoln Bible. Okay. Yeah, and I know there were lots of Bibles that had the Apocrypha in it. And what's your point? Let's see. Yeah, so that's it for today's video. Like, we can go all over in every direction, but I want to give you time to go have breakfast with your family. And thanks for watching. Hope you guys got something out of this. If you have, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in another video. Bye for now. One interesting thing, I just saw a comment. Where did it go? Right here. An interesting thing, after Trump visited McDonald's, the E. coli thing happened. I didn't hear anything about that. So are you saying, Holly, that there was maybe news reports that E. coli increased, jumped up because, or was it the exact place that Trump was, that all of a sudden there is E. coli, which I think that would be a weak thing for someone to do, that to get people sick at that location because Trump is there and then blame it on them. It's an interesting play if that's what they did. But you never know what people do. You just never know. People are wicked and they'll try and overturn things that are done for good. Like, for example, Trump he thought it was just going to be a simple one-up where basically you just show up, take pictures, but then he decided to make fries, make food, all this kind of stuff, and serve people. And he said there was like 28,000 people around the outside of that particular McDonald's. So I think there are going to be people flocking to that McDonald's from here on in. And then I think if you put an E. coli scare at that McDonald's, I don't know if it'll work. I really don't, because I think you can make sure and monitor. If anything, they would be more on top of it now because more people are coming. So it's my thoughts. Anyways, thanks for watching. Go have breakfast with your family. Go hang out, and I'll see you guys in another video. Bye for now. Let me see if I can have this. Here we go.
Black Swan Revelations here on YouTube brought you today's mind-bending journey. Dive into the discussion, your comments, questions, prayer requests, and powerful testimonies of Jesus' love are what fuel this community. Did today's episode hit home? Smash that like button. New here? Subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a live stream or a video upload. Thanks for being part of today's adventure. Catch you in the next video, or maybe even in the clouds. Stay curious, stay blessed.